Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Welcome. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is Food and Our Emotions. And we are going to be taking a look at the pros and cons of the DASH diet, which is dietary approaches to stop hypertension. Joining me is our longevity strategist and expert, Mr. red.olaughlin. Welcome to the program. Hello,
Howdy,
Red.
Howdy, Dr. Jacalyn. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to see you as well. And I'm super excited that we are doing this program because, as you know, there's a lot of confusion when it comes to making healthy lifestyle choices. And you have taken it upon yourself to do a lot of research to educate our audience on various diets. Today's the DASH diet, which I had not heard anything about. So I'm super excited to learn more. But before we go there, Red, I would love for you to share with our audience your passion and your background when it comes to longevity.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate that opportunity. I'm a researcher. I fell in love with chemistry decades ago, back when I was in high school. And it wasn't until my wife came down with breast cancer a few years ago that I had a chance to delve back into chemistry, into things. And I found fascinating to dive into the human body at the cellular level and I look for cause and effect relationships. What chemical reactions cause the next one? What can you do to speed up that reaction? What can you do to slow it down? And all of a sudden, my whole focus changed to health and wellness, but primarily the focus was on what causes things to happen. If you treat a cause, you can fix a problem. If you treat symptoms, put a Band-Aid on something, you're not fixing anything. The Band-Aid's there and it stays forever. However, as I started getting more and more involved, since I'm getting older every day, I started focusing a little bit on longevity, age-related diseases. I'm getting up there in age. I wrote a couple of books on age-related diseases, causes of diseases. And so from that perspective, I started getting more and more. I've written a lot of articles on it. The whole thing is just as you mentioned, Emily, that's a passion of mine. A day hardly goes by that I'm not looking up something on the internet with regard to, well, I didn't know that happened. Let's look at it further. And to look at it from, well, is that really true? It's like, does saturated fat really cause cardiovascular issues? Does red meat really cause a problem? Because I try to look at both sides of the equation and then form an opinion based on what I'm looking at, who says what at what point in time. Because at some point in time, saturated fats was absolutely the most onerous thing you could have. And then they started including saturated vegetable fats such as palm oil and coconut oil, but there was no evidence. It was just, well, it's a saturated fat. Well, as they found out later on, saturated plant fats aren't near as the same, they are not in the same category as saturated plant fats. And the saturated plant fats animal fats aren't near as bad as they say they are. Regardless, Dr. Jacalyn and I were talking a few weeks back about what can we do to improve the quality of this particular show. And food, there's so many different kinds of food shows out there. I have one that we will be doing a little bit later on today on health and wellness. Sometimes it touches the area of food, sometimes it doesn't. But this one here is dedicated originally food and our emotions, because everything we eat, we're going to manifest in one way, shape, or form. But as we start looking at diets, and these things are things that we temporarily do, we we hear diet. I'm going to be on it for 6 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 months. But in reality, if you want to have good health lasting long into your retired uh, age, then you really need to develop a lifestyle. So you want a diet that you can adapt to and live through. I mentioned before that I lived on Atkins for a number of years. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I didn't realize the cons of it or how to work around the cons to make that a really acceptable diet. Regardless, today we're talking about the DASH diet. And the DASH diet literally means dietary approaches to stop hypertension. This is put out, I'm going to say back in the 80s, if I remember right, by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. And this thing was, the primary focus was hypertension. And Dr. Jacalyn, I'm sure that you may have had one or two high blood pressure readings. Is that a fair statement? I think 90% of Americans at some point in time have high blood pressure.
I have high blood pressure right now, Red. How do you like that? Not
But
like anything's been going on. So,
no, I mean, it's stress causes high blood pressure. But if you're trying to fix stress with a diet, that doesn't always work. I mean, I started noticing back in the late 70s, early 80s that my blood pressure on my flight physicals from the Navy, I'm a Navy aviator, I was a naval aviator for 16 years, that when I fly every year, I have to get an annual physical. Well, even after I stopped flying, I still had to get an aviation physical every year. So in my particular life, from 1968 through 1999, I got a flight physical every single year. And after that point in time, it's kind of hard to stop a habit. I'm not getting flight physicals, but I'm getting physicals. I haven't missed one since 1968. Regardless, the whole focus of this diet was for hypertension. Well, if you're not taking your blood pressure, how do you know you have high blood pressure? So one of the first things to do, and these things are so simple nowadays, for something that goes around your wrist or around your arm that's automatic, probably under $40 in most places. If you're over 45, I would think that that's a very valuable tool to have. There are a lot of valuable tools out there that you should have in your home in order to help you assess where you're at. And blood pressure is one of them. But if you don't know you have high blood pressure, they call it the silent killer, because you can feel perfectly well and have an extremely high blood pressure. I was diagnosed with gallbladder issue, I guess almost 20 years ago. And I get to the emergency room. I'm there at 4:45 in the morning. I'd been in pain most of the night, and my blood pressure was around 250 over 190. I didn't feel it other than the pain in my gut, but that was enough to cause them a problem. They thought I was having a heart attack. Anyway, long story, but the blood pressure was caused by having an internal problem. I also was in Vietnam, so I have high blood pressure. Part of that's because of Agent Orange. Changing my diet will help, but there are other things too. And when you have high blood pressure, a diet is a kind of a go-to thing, because I want to fix my blood pressure, but I want to lose a couple pounds too. And I think that's a fairly common approach, don't you think, so Dr. Jacalyn?
yes, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I do think that's true. It's not about just doing one or two little tweaks. It's about actually doing assessment of how you're living, what your lifestyle looks like, and what you can change for the good and the long term, the big picture, not just today.
I think you're kind of like me. You go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "I'm going to put you on this pill," and you say, "Is there something else I can do?"
Yes.
I am very reluctant to go on pills. Well, one of the things I learned from the military, from flight, is that if I was right at my maximum weight, I would have high blood pressure. So if I get down 5 or 10 pounds below, none. But also, I was running a lot back then, and sometimes you get in cycles where, yeah, I'm running 3-4 days a week, hours a week per se, and then sometimes I'm out. And when I wasn't running, I would have high blood pressure if my weight was up. So two things: exercise and weight. I could control blood pressure super easy. I mean, boom, give me 5 hours, and tomorrow morning I take a flight physical, I'm fine. Absolutely no problem at all. But that's something you have to do. That's a lifestyle, as you just mentioned. we have to do that literally every single day in order to do it. I know you're a big gym advocate. You really and truly love what you do there. It's one of those things you look forward to every day. It's a great stress reliever. But with the DASH diet, yeah, exercise is nice, but what they really want us to do is to focus more on the fruits and vegetables, things that on Atkins they say do it, but it's not there with an emphasis. They want the diets that are high in vitamins, minerals, fiber. They want balanced nutrition across the board. They include whole grains, your brown rice, oats, wheat, that things that are in that category. I'm not a big carb person. I don't think there's any essential carbs that you have to have for a diet. And there are many ways to get fiber. Your fruits and vegetables provide that. But again, it's in moderation, it's in low amounts. It's not as difficult as the South Beach diet to start. That one, I think you just completely remove those from your options, food options. They want you to have lean proteins. They want your basic fish and chicken and that kind of stuff. Not too much red meat, but that's what they want on this kind of diet. So it's not a very difficult thing. The dairy, they want low fat, fat free. Now that's where I start having a problem, because automatically the assumption is that if I'm eating fat, it's a problem. And so they're going to focus you on fat free or low fat. And I've done a lot of looking at that. And I think from a marketing perspective, it sounds good. I'm not getting any fat. Well, there are other issues there too that really need some level of review. But from this perspective, if I only give one thumbs down, it's going to be on the low fat, no fat option for dairy. Nuts and seeds, pretty standard. The big issue with the DASH diet is the fact that they limit sodium. I remember back in the 70s, I was looking at what can I do to lower my blood pressure. And one of the big things back then was remove sodium from your diet. Why? It makes sense. It was one of those things that you can do. And I did, and I found it difficult. It was difficult to not cook with salt. It was difficult not to add salt to anything. And over several months, I actually was able to get off salt. It was a lot more difficult to get off sugar. But regardless, the sugar is an issue with anything. And on the DASH diet, they try to limit it a lot. Now, on the pros and cons of this diet, there's a lot to be said, because from the pro perspective, it works. If the patients were given the DASH diet and they kept to it, they did lower their blood pressure. Now, part of that blood pressure lowering was the fact that they actually lost some weight. So if you look at what causes you to lose, what other things can I do to lower my blood pressure? Well, weight control is one of them. You start getting, for men, your waist gets over 40, for women over 35. That has a tendency just by itself to get a higher blood pressure. It's just one of those things that if my waist is 46, I have a risk. I have a higher risk of having blood pressure than if my waist is 36. And so those are things that you can look at. But so the waist measurement is a good indicator. It's also an indicator of how many extra pounds you're carrying. You may be carrying just the right amount of pounds, but it may be in the wrong places. Exercise probably in and of itself is one of the absolute best things to lower your blood pressure. Now, what does exercise mean? Well, let me ask you, Dr. Jacalyn, what does exercise mean to you?
To me, well, I have my Apple Watch and I have to get at least 75 minutes of exercise and I have to burn 620 calories. So that's whatever that takes. It's usually 2 workouts a day.
And I'm trying to find myself back here on the screen. There I am. I pushed the
What does
wrong
it
button.
mean?
I pushed the wrong button. I'm sorry. And I was gone. Regardless, I'm back. So your exercise is probably more intense than most people, I would think. Is that a fair statement?
I would think so. I don't know. For example, one of the things that I love to do is I have a spin bike because I was a spin instructor for a while, and I put on 2, I call them fat belts, and then I put on a sweatshirt, and then I put on a 20-pound weighted vest. And then I ride the bike for usually an hour and a half to 2 hours. I'll do push-ups with the weighted vest, and then I'll do some yoga, and then I'll walk 5-6 miles. I'll go to the gym, lift weights. So not all that in the same day, but usually 2 workouts in a day, or one workout that encompasses what would be 2 workouts.
Okay. I would consider that to be more vigorous than most people. So for
Okay.
exercise, what I'm literally talking about is something it can be aerobic, but doesn't have to be. If we're looking at just something simple like the walking, my wife and I go out walking fairly often. It's a slower pace than what we want, but the temperatures here have been in triple digits for quite a while. And so you go out, you want to make sure you're well hydrated. You want to make sure that you get the right kind of covering for your head when there's no clouds in the sky and it's 105 degrees. But it's one of those things. We walk in the middle of the afternoon, usually 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We walk, but that walking in and of itself makes a difference. We can come back and take your blood pressure before and after leaving the house. You come back to the house, blood pressure is lower. In some cases, significantly lower. And all we did was walk. Now, it's only for 45 minutes or an hour, but that walking is enough. Now, let's say that you're at work and you don't have a chance. Well, maybe you can take the stairs. And, if you're going to go up 2 or 3 flights of stairs, once an hour, take a 5-minute break, walk down to the elevator, don't take it, take the stairs up 2 or 3. Any little amount of exercise, even 2 floors worth of stairs, are enough to create a little extra charge on your heart to get it pumping a little bit more. Obviously, the DASH diet is a very healthy diet from the perspective of getting your fruits and vegetables, your minerals, your vitamins, your fiber, all that kind of stuff. It's good in reducing sodium, salt that we have in our diet. The DASH diet doesn't talk about alcohol very much, but I think any limitation on alcohol and any absolute quitting of smoking is a good deal. But with regard to the things that we talked about earlier, stress is a big, big, big bumper upper of hypertension. So if your cause of your hypertension is stress, then you need stress management. If your cause of high blood pressure is stress and overweight, well, the diet's definitely going to help you with the overweight part of it. So as with most things that we look at from a medical or health perspective, there's just not a single cause. There are generally multiple causes of something. So if you're not exercising, you're a little bit overweight, you're stressed out, you're eating the wrong kinds of foods, there's 4 things right there that can cause high blood pressure, but they're addressable, but you have to know what they are. So from our perspective, that's something that's very, very important. Now, if I look at the cons of the DASH diet, what do you think they might be, Dr. Jacalyn?
I have a question before we get to that. I just wondered, they've changed the upper and lower number, I believe, for blood pressure readings. Do you know what the current number is that you're supposed
Well,
to keep?
the old standard used to be the 120/80. That was quote to be the ideal. Anything 140/90, you're right at the cusp of being on high blood pressure. So if you're 134/88, doctors don't care for whatever reason. They may say you're starting to get a little high, let's watch it. But generally speaking, if you're in the 120s/80s, you're fine. However, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago, it was before COVID. I think everything nowadays is going to be before COVID. Hang on one second here, take care of that problem. The current one, as I'm aware of, I think is around 115/75. Might be 1 or 2 above or below, but it's not much different from the other one. So if you were looking at an ideal blood pressure, and let me get that back out where we're back to normal. The ideal is around probably 115/75, 116/76. So if you're getting down 5 or 10 below the 120, that's good. You're getting down below 80, that's good. Now you get 90/60, that's low blood pressure. You need to talk to your doctor. So there are some areas in there that low is low and it's a concern. There are other areas where low is good. But again, even doctors don't always know what low is. I mean, I can't tell you how many decades I went with my total cholesterol being 104/114 total. That was max. And I talked to flight surgeon about it, talked to, we don't know. Well, I finally, after about 20 years, I found somebody who had specialized in it. He says, unless your cholesterol gets in the low 90s total, don't worry about it. Well, I mean, my last blood cholesterol was just 3 weeks ago. I was 114 total cholesterol, but now my HDL was 39, which is it's below 40. They get panicky. No, you don't understand. You take the ratio of the LDL and HDL. Don't worry about the individual numbers. And in my particular case, I'm well set for what I am, but that to me is a genetic predisposition. My dad had that same kind of thing. To the best of my knowledge, I believe my son does. I can't remember what my daughter's cholesterol readings were, but that's one where low is good, but it's really rare to get it too low. But blood pressure, yeah, you can get it too low. Hydration, big deal. If you're not hydrated, you're going to run the risk of having high blood pressure because there's not enough. 90% of your body's water. You start getting anywhere down 2, 3, 4, 5% dehydrated. It's going to take more effort to push that blood through your blood vessels. So you could be dehydrated consistently because you're not drinking enough fluids. And fluids, now I'm talking about not coffee, not tea, because both of them have caffeine unless it's decaffeinated. I'm not talking about diet drinks. Most of them have caffeine. I'm talking about water. I'm talking about the kinds of liquids that are not sugar coated or added extra chemicals in there. So from a hydration perspective, water. That is really and truly. So it may be that you're overweight, you're not exercising, you're stressed out, you're not eating properly, and you're not hydrated. So we got 5 things right there that can cause high blood pressure. But the DASH diet is going to give you the right amount of foods to eat. It's going to give you that balance of what you need to have. It's not talking a whole lot about hydration, but in most kinds of diets, they want you to drink a certain amount of stuff. And the exercise and the stress management are things that should be part of your lifestyle anyway. But if I want to continue on, was there anything else you wanted to go on that before we go into the cons on?
No, I'm good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so if I want to compare that to the standard American diet, that's what 90% of us live off of. The DASH diet is a far superior diet to that. Give it 2 thumbs up in comparison to standard American diet. You have the fruits and vegetables. You have a lot of the things you need, no doubt about it. The South Beach diet, well, when we talked about the South Beach diet was developed for cardiovascular health. That was the whole focus of that particular diet. And we said, a couple weeks ago, whatever it was, it's difficult to get transitioned into it, just like getting transitioned into Atkins or into keto or whatever. There's a transition phase. It might be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that the body, not everyone, but some people's bodies revolt at making a snap change where I'm taking a lot of carbs out of my system and things like that. So if you have a restrictive carb portion of your diet, that's going to be a potential problem for some people. You pull sugar out of your diet, that's going to be a potential problem. Headaches, fatigue, a lot of other things can happen. You pull salt out of your diet and you have a very healthy, salty lifestyle. That again, there's some level of withdrawal. So those things can be an issue. Weight Watchers, I think there is probably a little bit more sodium in the Weight Watchers diet compared to the DASH diet, primarily because of the way they do things. And especially on Nutrisystem, where you have everything packaged and delivered, definitely going to be more on the preservative, on the salt side. They're going to try to do as natural as they can, but there's going to be some issues there. When you compare it to the Mediterranean diet, which we talked about, the Mediterranean diet has more olive oil. That's an omega-9 oil, not a 6 or a 3. We want our diets to have a lot of omega-3s, not so many omega-6s, and omega-9s are not necessarily an essential fatty acid like the omega-3 and omega-6, but they're okay, and they work well in the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet has an allowance for some level, moderate level of red wine, which in most American diets, they say, no, let's just kind of back off for a while. So from the American diet, DASH diet, Nutrisystem, they're going to tell you, back off a little bit. Mediterranean diet, moderation's fine. So, but the issues that we're talking about on the DASH diet, I would definitely give the DASH diet 2 thumbs up. I have no problem giving it 2 thumbs up. I have a concern with the fat-free dairy. That is definitely a concern. Beyond that, I'm not sure I have a whole lot of concerns. What are your thoughts, Dr. Jacalyn, having listened to at least the first part of this?
I think it sounds good. I mean, compared to some of the other diets that we've talked about, I like the fact that there's no weigh-in or public weigh-in. And when you have a concern about the fat-free dairy, do you have a concern about dairy overall? And by the way, when it comes to dairy, I love cheese, and cheese is big on the Atkins diet, right? You can have cheese, but for most people, cheese is not something that's good to eat, healthy to eat.
Well, it depends on a number of things. In moderation, cheese is fine. If you're sitting there and you go through a half a pound of cheese a day, that might be a concern. However, with it's like anything else in our life, what are you getting? Only cheese, or are you getting a lot of other packaged stuff? If you take a look at cheese and you try to melt it and it doesn't melt, there's probably something wrong. If it's individually packaged, there may be something wrong, because that's not the way cheese is. It's a convenience factor. So the more something's processed, the more concern I have for it. When extra stuff is taken out, the whole fat is taken out of it, I have a concern about it, because that's not the way nature works. So from my perspective, I would rather have a little bit of something really good than a lot of something that's not so good for you. Now, with regard to the DASH diet, they want whole fruits and vegetables and lean meats. You know, if I were to look at it from a comparison to the standard American diet, ka-ching, 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 lots of more money being spent on things that I wouldn't normally buy. But on Nutrisystem, because I'm spending a healthy amount of money on food, the DASH diet may actually be a cheaper way of going. Weight Watchers, again, a bit of a concern there, but if you're gonna have a healthy lifestyle, you're gonna have to spend some money in order to do that. That money doesn't have to be a gym membership, but it does have to be awareness and education, a lot of which you're providing here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. But the thing that the DASH diet does, it changes a lifestyle for you. You're given a balanced nutrition. You're given the ability to track your blood pressure during the course of this diet. And if everything gets down and you start adding a little bit of what you used to have, and you see your blood pressure rising again, now you can say, well, that was the cause of my blood pressure. Let's take that back out of my diet and watch it come back down, as it should. Now, it may be that the DASH diet with a half-hour exercise every day does absolute wonders. You give up the exercise and the blood pressure comes back up again. What is more effective for you? Is it more effective to have the diet you had before, because that was your lifestyle, you're living on it, and you just change your lifestyle to have more exercise? Maybe that's a wiser choice with regard to what's going on. So again, there's a lot of trade-offs there, Dr. Jacalyn, and the DASH diet, I think, is a perfectly acceptable one, just as we said for Nutrisystems and Weight Watchers and the others. Nothing there that I have a problem with. And everything that we do have a problem with, just be aware of that. It's like Atkins. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, one thing I just wanted to share is, and I just have made note of this because of my Apple Watch, and again, not a paid spokesperson, but on the Apple Watch, there are the rings. So there's a standing ring, how many hours you're standing, then there's an exercise ring, and then there's a movement ring. So what I wanted to really differentiate is between movement and exercise. So even though I could sit on my spin bike and I can be pedaling without any resistance or really pushing myself, the watch will not register every minute that I'm doing that, because that's not considered to be exercise, because I'm not getting my heart rate elevated. So I think there's an important differentiation to be made between exercise and movement. What do you think, Red?
I think there's a lot to be said for that. Let's say you just go out and you walk half a mile and you're back, boom. Yeah, you're getting some benefit from it. If it's outside, which most places are, you're getting sunshine, you're getting fresh air. That in and of itself, along with a little bit of exercise, reduces stress. After you do this a few times, you find out, well, it took me 15 minutes to walk a half a mile. Well, today, after 2 weeks, I can get this thing down in 12 minutes. And then another,
it's a pretty fast walk.
Well, 24-minute mile is not a difficult walk at all. I don't think so. I mean,
No, no, no. I thought you said 12-minute walk. That's a
No,
jog.
half a mile,
Oh, half a mile. Sorry. Yeah.
half a mile. Because if you're starting out, most people can't envision a mile, but a half a mile, you walk out for a quarter mile, you turn around, you come back, and then you gradually increase it. Well, you're developing a new habit, but your body accommodates whatever you're doing. You know, if you're not eating, the body's going to accommodate from a metabolic perspective. It's going to change a little bit. And so you're exercising more and your body's going to change. Now you're looking at it from a measurement perspective of what Apple decided they wanted to measure. So they're measuring a particular component of the exercise that you're doing, movement versus cardiovascular exercise where your heart is really pumping up. From the DASH diet perspective, from this lowering blood pressure, yeah, it would be nice to have cardiovascular exercise. Is it needed? Initially, no. What's needed is the mindset change that you can actually get the benefit of exercise, fresh air, sunshine, and start incorporating that into whatever you're doing. You know, if you're not doing any exercise, you drive to work, you go to work, you're there all day, you stress out, you come home, bring a little drama with you, you eat, you sit in front of your TV set, you go to bed, boom, no exercise. That's just who we are. That's what we've done all our lives. It's just that's not much I can do to change that. But from an awareness perspective, a little bit helps. And maybe it's just walking around the block a couple times. Whatever it is, do something. Now, on the DASH diet, there's not really a major portion there talking about exercise, just like they're not talking about your improved sleep. Sleep is a big issue. If you're not getting good quality sleep, it's going to be manifested in some level of stress. Stress is going to put on extra pounds. Stress is going to increase your blood pressure. A lot of extra things can happen. But I think from what you're talking about, Dr. Jacalyn, if I am standing, not moving, you're right, I'm not doing anything. If I'm standing and I'm on a treadmill, but I'm not getting my heart up, I'm just kind of having fun. You're still getting exercise. Your body is doing something it wasn't doing. It's just not being measured in the way Apple wants to measure it.
Well, I'll give you an example when it comes to exercise or movement. So if I go out and I walk, I'll easily walk 6 miles, and the watch is tracking it and it's giving me credit for that being exercise. But when I look at movement for the number of calories that have been burned, it's relatively low. However, if I took that same time and I cut it in half and I jumped on a trampoline, I could burn double the amount of calories. So I think that that's important as well. So the walking is really good for you mentally. And I've come up with some incredible ideas. That's how I started my Dr. Jacalyn business. Was I was out on the boardwalk walking and the idea came to me. So I think that's really important. But I also think for heart health, you have to get your heart rate up to a certain number and keep it there, that threshold, for a certain amount of time to be considered exercise.
Well, and what's that number? You know, if your resting heart rate is, let's say 72, you get it up to 80. Is that enough? Or is it 82, 88, 92? Yeah.
There's I forget what it is. There's a chart that shows you where it has to be depending on your age and how many minutes you need to keep it there.
Well, there's also weight. There's also hydration. There's a number of other factors. And yes, that's a generic chart for some people. But if all I've done was sit on the couch and I'm 30 pounds overweight and I try to do something above and beyond my norm, then maybe 85 is exercising for me, but for somebody else, it has to be 105. So I think it depends on where you're at in that exercise program. I don't want to call it a life. There's an exercise regimen that you're going to be doing. If you're brand new, you're not going to be able to maintain 120 heartbeats per minute very long. You're going to be just out of gas. But if your ability to do 100 and can maintain it, that's fine. Now, later on, when you get some peak per level, you're going to be looking at something totally different. At least I do. When I go out, I try to keep my running pulse somewhere around 155, 160. That to me is my running pulse. But as soon as I'm done, the first thing I do is I measure my pulse as soon as I stop. And let's say it's 150. Then I look at how long does it take to come under 120. It's a recovery rate. So I have my heart rate recovery rate, my pulse recovery rate. That to me tells me how cardiovascular fit I am. So if I get that under a minute, boom, it goes from 150, 120 thing. But if it takes me 10 minutes to get under 120, that's another issue totally. So there are a lot of different ways of measuring our level of fitness. And you're absolutely right when you say we should be able to take that level of fitness and quantify it where, okay, if I can maintain 110 for 20 minutes, I'm cardiovascular, I'm good. And then as you'll find out, you have to do more and more and more to get to 110 because your body accommodates that level of exercise. So what used to be onerous to get to 110, now you can do it easily. And then to get some level of training, now you need to go to 120. I think you were doing, if I remember right, you were doing planks last year. Is that or this earlier this year? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I was really focused on planks, and it was last summer that I set my record. And I'm doing planks, but not as much. I'm going to be getting back into it probably
Okay.
this.
So when you did your first plank for a minute, that was difficult.
I don't
And-
remember that far back,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I know you're saying yes.
Okay. So when you do your plank for a certain period of time, now you have a goal, you're going to increase that. Uh, let's say that you got to 3 minutes and you want to make it 4 minutes. At some point in time, 3 minutes was fairly easy to get to, and you didn't really have a problem till you get to 4 minutes. Okay, now you get to 4 minutes, you're going to go to five. You can get to 4 minutes a lot easier than the first time you get to 4 minutes. So that same thing applies in whatever cardiovascular exercise we're doing. If I'm going out and I'm running 1 mile, great, that's wonderful. But for me to go out and run 6 miles at one time, that's probably something that's not going to happen the first time. If I do, I'm going to have a lot of other issues. The body has to accommodate that increase. So as we're looking at any kind of thing, whether it's this diet, DASH diet, Nutrisystems, Weight Watchers, doesn't matter. The accommodation for any kind of diet, I think we talked about this last week, allow yourself some specific time. Get an accountability partner. If I can say, Dr. Jacalyn, I'm going on this DASH diet. I want to do it for 2 months. I'm going to call you every week on Sunday afternoon, or I'm going to send you a text and I'm going to tell you that I did it every single day and I need my gold star and you're going to send me one. There's a level of commitment that you're going to have to take. You're not just taking a diet, yes, temporary, but you want to derive the benefits. And any benefit from a change in your lifestyle is going to take a minimum of at least 3 weeks, 4 weeks to see some value in it. You lose 5, 6, 8, 9 pounds, and boom, then you don't lose another pound for 2 weeks. That's part of that accommodation. You're at a plateau. So if you're doing this diet or any other diet and you're under medical supervision, like this particular diet probably would be, I would not recommend any kind of diet change to what you're doing right now, with at least not talking to your doctor. Go and talk to the nurse practitioner, let them know what's going on. If there's an issue there and you need some kind of medical following, then there's somebody. But don't just start something, that sounds like a good diet, I'd love to do something like that. No, don't. We're here to help you. We're here to provide awareness. We're here to provide education. But the best education is don't change something that's going to affect your health without talking to a professional first. And that's something that you should do. But if you're going to just start it, commit to start it, whether it's a minimum of 30 days, realistically 60 days, ideally 90 days. Because 90 days, you're going to have a new habit in life that you're able to do that you're not able to do after 30 days. With that, Dr. Jacalyn, any other questions you might have?
No, you did an outstanding job as always in reviewing the diet. So thank you for that. Red, you have several shows coming up. Let's hear more about that.
Well, on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, I think Dr. Jacalyn has what now, 465 shows a week?
That's just today. No, I'm kidding.
But anyway, here, let's see, it's 10:40. 2 hours from now, I'll be checking back in for 1 o'clock Central Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, a show called The Wise Ones. And today we have Marla Reagan. She's a productivity expert, super organizer, #1 best-selling author. I've known her for years. In fact, I was able to talk, or I'll mention this later on today, but one of the programs that she and I both attended out at NASA just before COVID, the guy brought out a huge bag, heavy bag of broken glass. And I walked on broken glass and talked her into walking on broken glass. So it was an experience. But anyway, I've known her for a number of years. We've networked a lot of different things together. Great person. I think you'll love listening to her and getting some insights into many different aspects of organization and productivity. Immediately following that, we have a show, and today's show is called Talking Heads, and the focus has been the last 3 weeks on pain control. And the whole focus of the pain control is, what is pain? How is pain transmitted? We've talked about that. Well, now we're going to be talking about how is pain controlled. We talked about the transmission. We now want to talk about, how can I control pain? What options are available to me? What works? What should I think about? What can I talk to my doctor about? So from pain management, pain transmission, pain control, the focus today is on pain control. And so if you're able to join us today, 2:00 Central, 3:00 Eastern, Talking Heads, USA Global TV and Radio Network.
Thank you so much, Red. It was a pleasure seeing you. And our next show is coming up, which you will be hosting next week, The Corner Bookstore with Diane Floyd-Beam. So please do join us for that. Until then, we look forward to seeing you all next week. Let's take a moment to hear from one of our sponsors, Zane Carson Carruth. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Hi, my name is Zane Carson Carruth, and I'm the author of this book, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever.
Reading is magic. Studies have shown that reading to your children lays the foundation for greater success in life. Reading helps develop language and vocabulary skills. It helps improve memory, and it encourages curiosity and inspires creativity. The benefits are immeasurable, and as a parent, you'll benefit too. In only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll be creating more memories and a bonding experience that will last for years to come. So take time to read to your children. Read them books about things that engage and interest them. Tales of fairies and magic fascinate children, and as everyone knows, the Tooth Fairy is at the top of the list. If your child loves magic, wands, adventure, and what child doesn't, you'll love reading them books from the trademarked series, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever. Follow along as Abella, the world's first tooth fairy, accidentally starts the tooth fairy tradition. Learn the tricks of being a professional tooth fairy in the book, Abella Starts a Tooth Fairy School. Your child's imagination will soar as you read the adventures of Abella and her magic wand. These wonderful books are available at worldsfirsttoothfairy.com and at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.